Your child don't listen to you, your child ain't about to listen to me, and we about to have a long day. Good morning, you guys. So this is a completely different video, but we're flowing. That's what we're going to do on this channel. We are going to flow. And to be honest, I get a lot of questions. Everyone wants to start a business, but most people don't know where to begin, okay? And I have been given a wealth of knowledge. God has given me a wealth of knowledge. I have had various endeavors in different things. And like I said, I am not being boastful about any of it, but I do want to share, because though this is not something that I do any longer, it is something that you might be interested in. So without further ado, let's get started.
Okay, so step number one is I want you to visit your state's site. I live in Texas, so this is what the Texas site looks like. The site that you would need to look for is the Health and Human Services website in your area. You want to click on licensing and credentials, like find the terminology that says something about state licensing, and then in there you will find childcare licensing. I'm going to give you a lot of tips in this video, but one thing I can't give you is tips based on the region. Like I said, I have only went through this process here in Texas, so I can only give you information from there. So you need to look over this site in its entirety as far as the childcare licensing is concerned, because it will give you all of their regulations. You can see the whole process here. Just keep scrolling. Make sure you look over all these things in conjunction with the tips that I'm going to give you throughout this video. You want to be familiar with the processes, procedures, standards, guidelines on this website, because this is the beginning. This is how you start to get into this business of in-home childcare. Okay?
All right. Of course, I have my notes down here because y'all know I'm long-winded and I want to stay on task and on topic. So the next thing you would need to do is choose the type of daycare that you want to have. So do you want this to be in-home daycare? Do you want to get a facility? That's all something to think about. Licensed in-home daycares, you can have more children, therefore you can make more money, but let me let you in that there's also more regulations. You'll have more visits from the state. It's not as laid back. I say laid back, you know what I mean. It's not as laid back as some of the other it's not as laid back as some of the other sectors in-home daycare. Like I said, you'll have to answer to the state a little bit more. So that is most definitely something to think about. A registered in-home daycare is what I chose, just because it worked better with what I was trying to do with my daycare. And like I said, when licensing comes through and they take out their tape measures and they're measuring, and they're giving you all these reports, it can be very stressful. It can be very stressful for you, be very stressful for the children. So it's just not something that I want to do. It didn't make sense financially for me to go through that whole process, so I didn't do it. And lastly, there's a listed in-home daycare. Now this one is the minimum requirements. You don't get inspections. So the other two, you get inspections. On the listed home daycare, you don't get inspections unless someone's reported you. But keep in mind that you don't get as many children, so you can't make as much money. I forgot the exact number of children you have, but maybe it's from like 3 children to 5 children, depending on their age. So if you have 2 infants, you could probably only have 2 infants if you're a listed home. But like I said, the requirements they're more flexible, and you don't have to answer to the state so much. And one thing to keep in mind with this, and I'll make a completely separate video on this, is choosing to be at least a registered in-home daycare allows you access to some of the state's programs. I personally didn't use you go through like the workforce and people get like child care assistance. I didn't use that because I have had family members who have used the program, and it's been sort of a hassle. And I say it's a hassle because with that program, you have a lot of inspections through another agency. So that's something to keep in mind. But it is a way to generate more revenue if that's what you're looking to do. Also, with choosing to be a registered in-home daycare, I was able to use the child food program. You can't use the child food program, at least in my area, as a listed daycare. You have to at least be a registered in-home daycare. I will leave the link in the description to the food program that I used. They were awesome. It was easy. And like I said, I'll make a whole separate video on how to get into the food program. But just to keep you aware, you get reimbursed. You could make, however you want to put it, an extra $700 to $800 just by enrolling in the food program. They do come to inspect every so often, but they just want to make sure that you are actually feeding the children. They did count the children when they were there, so it's still an additional kind of inspection, but it keeps the money flowing and you're not coming out of your pocket with all of the meal money. So it's an amazing program to be a part of. Okay, so the next thing you want to consider is the people living inside of your home. I'm just going to put this in here because I feel like it's my due diligence to do so. Be aware of your background. If you have a background of being violent, if you feel like you lose your temper a lot, if you have a husband that maybe loses his temper a lot, if you have a teenage daughter or son, or just teenagers, or just people who frequent your home or who will be around your home that are not the best fit for children, don't get into this business. Don't just lie to the state and say, hey, nobody lives in my house aside from me. Actually, don't get into the business because you will end up in trouble somehow, some way. Please don't do that to other people's children and your own. Don't do that. So with that being said, consider your background because they will do a background check on you and anyone in the household above a certain age. So that's something to consider. Okay? The next thing you want to do, and this is a very important thing, and that is make the business legal. So when making the business legal, of course, the first step in that process is you want to come up with a name. The name of my daycare was Dominion Pathways, but Dominion Pathways was a company that I started because in the hopes of starting a group home for teenage mothers one day. So Dominion meaning to gain control back over. Dominion Pathways was gaining the pathway to gaining control over your life again. So that's why I chose the name. You don't have to choose something so meaningful. You can just choose something that's catchy. You can choose something that's easy to search in Google, but choosing a name is essential. And like I said, when making the business legal, I will also link in the description bar LegalZoom, which is the company, which is the company that I use to make all of my businesses legal. You do have to pay a little additional for the service, but it's worth it. You don't have to do all the legwork. So if you don't have time to do all that, they do all the legwork for you. They send the documents in the mail. So I like them as a company. I would do a sole proprietorship. There's a lot of videos on business structures here on YouTube. So that's something that you should look into. That's the one I chose. Depending on how big, you can always change it depending on how big you want your business to grow. Like if you want multiple centers, of course, I wouldn't do a sole proprietorship. So that's something to consider, but choosing a name is a must because it's going to help us with all of the other steps, making this legal. And don't forget, at the end of the year, you have to do your taxes and stuff, and you want to be able to get deductions and credits and things like that. But in order to do that, in order to qualify for maybe some loans or things like that, you want to make it a legal business structure, okay? And I want to add a tip in here for making this an actual business. So you say, Tanzania, why can't I just watch kids in my house? Okay, I can watch kids in my house. Nobody gonna catch me. I ain't gonna get in trouble for nothing. Until you do. I'm going to tell you guys this story. I've had a few incidents I had a lot of incidents, let's be honest. And it's probably because of the demographic that I chose to cater to, but I think it's just in general. Even my daughter goes to daycare and stuff just happens. And some people are not as level-headed. Some people are petty. You don't want to get caught legally in anyone's petty crossfires. You don't want to get caught up in any of that kind of stuff because we're talking about the state. This stuff is going to follow you, okay? So one time I had a parent and the parent and the co-parent got into a little debacle, so a child support issue. And the non-custodial parent went to come get the child. Well, the police actually ended up showing up and was basically kind of looking at me like, oh, she in her home, she must be just watching kids. Well, no, I pulled out all my documentation. I pulled out all my licensing. I had all my inspections laid out, and I was an actual business. This was an actual daycare. Everything, it wasn't just cute and set up. It was an actual daycare structure. So the child ended up not being able to go. And that's what the police was like. If this was just you babysitting, even though the mom didn't want the child to go, the child would have had to go with a non-custodial parent. It doesn't matter if you think that the situation is dangerous. And I've had this happen multiple times where the non-custodial parent comes knocking on my door, much like a school. Well, the school is not allowed to just release the child to anyone, but if it's not like an actual structure to where the legal system, penalizes it in a certain type of way, you won't have the same level of protection. You don't know these people. And when you're dealing with people's kids, things get crazy. So that's why you want to have the business structure set up, not just like as far as it relates to taxes, but as it relates to the whole daycare structure. Okay. You want the protection of the state, as much as possible. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is you want to find a space. Now, when I first started doing daycare, I actually, by the grace of God, okay, I actually was just babysitting my nephew, and it kind of rolled into me getting another child. And the next thing you know, I didn't want to get in trouble for things not being legal. So then I end up going through this whole licensing process. But if I have a picture, I'll insert a picture. I started my daycare in an apartment, and we turned the whole living room, dining room area. So imagine this whole space right here. None of this was my home. All of this was a daycare. Like when you walked in the front door, it just looked like a daycare center. So that's what I did. It brought me great pleasure. It really did. But we had an apartment for the daycare. We later moved into a home and then turned we had the backyard, the garage was a play area, the whole living room, dining room area. A great deal of the house was the daycare. So find a space. You don't necessarily have to rent out a space. It's definitely more cost efficient to be an in-home provider because you have your home and you can also get like tax deductions and things like that on using your home. You think about waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I don't have to drive anywhere. But there is a downside to it. And the downside is all of these people know where I live. And when I don't have good situations, because sometimes things didn't always go smooth sailing, these people do know where I live. So find a space. And with that being said, get some security. I didn't put that in here, but get security cameras, get an alarm system. The Ring alarm system is a great system. I have it on my home now. I have it in my apartment now. Just get surveillance around the home because you want things to be documented. I had cameras everywhere, and they were actually recording. Okay. So the next thing is start thinking of who you want to serve. Because this is going to help you along in the journey. Some people say, I want to do daycare because I want to stay at home with my kids. Let me tell you, that is the worst reason to get into this business, and it might not sustain you long. My daughter actually, from the time that she was born, so from about like 6 weeks, of course, you have to wait a little while. From about 6 weeks, my daughter went to daycare. My daughter has been in daycare since she was a very young age. She's at daycare right now. And I did this because my daycare to me was my job. It wasn't just me being at home with my kids, So I would say that's not a good reason to start doing childcare, but it's some people's reason. So start thinking about why you want to do it. I was a teen mother, and I found that the thing that was the hardest for me in gaining my independence as a person, as a woman, was I did not have childcare. I had to lean on people, and I had to rely on people that didn't necessarily have my best interest at heart because I needed the help to care for my child. So that's why I started doing this. I wanted to give young women their freedom back. So I did this at very low rates. I mean, very low rates. We'll get to that in a second. But you just want to start thinking about who it is that you want to serve. Like, why are you doing this? And you're going to need that later on, I promise. Okay, so the next thing is pricing. Like I said, I did it at a very, very affordable rate. I'm going to put it on the screen here, the rates that I was charging the families for daycare. And when I tell you very affordable, when you guys see it, you're going to think that I'm crazy. And the truth is, I might be a little bit crazy, but this was a vision that God had given me. And I just knew that I would be provided for, my family would be taken care of. And to be honest, everything that I have right now is because of the seeds that I've sown into other families' lives, just to see. Some people didn't take it well, like some people didn't get anything out of it, but the women who got something out of it and transformed their lives means so much to me. Okay, so yes, I did it at affordable rate because I was trying to serve teen mothers. I was trying to serve young women. So $200 a week daycare wasn't something that I knew that they could afford. And like I said, my prices were based off of what I felt that God was leading me to do. But you want to make sure you go through that process as well. But make sure if you're trying to do this thing for money, make sure that you charge accordingly. I've had great daycares. My daughter has had, good daycares. And to be honest, the good daycares, they had nothing to do with the price. The daycare that she's at now costs less than the daycare that she came from, and it's a far better daycare. So pricing is not always, indicative of the service that you'll get. I will insert pictures into this video and you'll see my kids had it all. We went on field trips, and guess what? My family, my husband and I, we paid for it all. I provided everything that I would have wanted a child of mine to receive in this daycare, and God blessed me for it. But it's not for everyone. I can say that, okay? It's not for everyone. So you want to think of your pricing. And I will show you, like I said, I'll show you my pricing structure so that you can use it. It's an easy form. You can just replace it with the numbers that you want to use. Policies and procedures, let me tell you, this is the center of your daycare business. I should have put this at the top because this is so important. First of all, you need policies and procedures. When licensing comes in, they are going to make sure that you have certain things inside of your policies. I will link in the description my policies, and these are all checked by the state of Texas, of course, and everything in the policy, everything that needs to be in the policy is in the policy and then some, because this policy hand booklet is your sanity. And what I would do is keep it posted online, okay? Keep it posted online so that parents can access it, because they will try you. If you do not have, don't do anything. Do not take one family without policies in place. And to be honest with you, every time I got a new group of kids, I added something else to my policy booklet that would help my sanity, okay? The next thing you're gonna do is make a website. Now, I don't usually do this, but this morning, as I was writing down some of the bulletin points for this video, I realized that not everyone is savvy enough to make a website. The worst thing that you can do, and I have learned this in the various businesses that I have run, the worst thing that you can do is to make people solely rely on DMing you, contacting you, using your phone number to get services. I've had some weirdos, even with the daycare situation, like people who I'm like, oh, this ain't gonna turn out right. Like, I don't need to let this person know where I live. Like using, discernment, using your better knowledge, okay, to gauge when you should not engage in certain conversations. One way that you can kind of weed out some foolishness is to set up a platform, set up a website, have all the information there. It brings about professionalism. But like I said, I didn't think about this until I was making these bulletin points. I can offer website services to you guys. Now, I'm not any web developer. I'm no expert. I have made sites for friends before, but honestly, when I've made the sites for friends, and even in making the sites for myself, they take a lot of time, okay? And if you are wanting to invest in your business, you can invest in making a website. So below in the description bar are the prices for the website, okay? They're not too expensive. I believe I put it from $100 to $250. The website that I have currently, my Lorena website, I'll have all the links there so you can see what kind of website, the websites that I have created, and then kind of how the pricing structure goes. So the website that I have now, the Lorena website, This website took me a long time to put together because it has a lot of links. There's a lot of pop-ups. It has a booking platform incorporated in it that takes a little bit more knowledge to set up. So it's a little bit more pricey. The website that I used for Dominion Pathways had a lot of links as well, and it had a lot of documents attached to it. So a website like that, it's a little bit pricey. I have a Candle website that'll be down there as well. That's very simple. It's only pictures. It's more of like an e-commerce kind of website, and it was very easy to set up. But I can set up websites for you guys and then give you the information to continue it on yourself. And then I'll set up a pricing structure as well. Like I said, everything will be down below for you to, like, let's say you want to change something, because I've done this in the past for people. I've made a website and they're like calling me every day to change something. All of the language, all of the writing and stuff like that is going to be sent from you to me in email. So anything that's typed out on there, any, misspelled words or anything like that, it's going to be your language. I'm literally going to be copying, pasting, designing, and arranging it. But a website is and I'm not just saying that because I want to make money and I could do it, because I was thinking about doing it for free. But honestly, I got other stuff to do, okay? And it takes a long time. So, and I would have to talk to you on the phone and kind of get, your vision for the whole thing. So yeah, it's going to be charged. But set up a website. Even if you can use Wix yourself and design it yourself, make sure you set up a website. You want things to be professional. You know how I am. Y'all know how I am. Don't go into anything just doing stuff, because people will treat you according to what it is that you're putting forward. Okay, so let's move on. All right, so start buying stuff. Start buying toys. I don't do the last minute buying stuff. My first thing of toys, my husband bought me some milk crates. He's a chef, as you guys know. He bought me some milk crates from work, and we started to fill up those milk crates with toys. I got toys from my sister that my nephew had grown out of. We bought toys from the Goodwill, bought toys from yard sales. Search for toys. Start searching for toys now. When I closed down my daycare, I only sold the chairs and tables. Out of all that stuff that you guys see in those pictures, the only thing that I really charged for was chairs and tables. All the other stuff, I set it outside of my home, and people came in droves to get this stuff. But I had spent thousands of dollars on daycare stuff. Someone's giving away this stuff. You just have to check for it. Check for daycare teachers, school teachers, especially around the summertime, who just throwing away curriculum, coloring sheets. Start buying your stuff now. Printers, a printer and a copy machine was so essential, especially when I did my parent interviews, taking copies of the driver's license. Get yourself a printer. Just start buying the things that you need. And we'll talk about in a later video some of the essentials, daycare owner essentials. We'll get into that later, but just know to start buying stuff. And if you don't know the things the essentials that you need to start buying, let's start with toys. We know that we'll need toys, okay? Okay, so the last important bullet point I'm going to mention in this video is advertising. Man. So because of the demographic that I chose to serve, I used Craigslist. Most of my daycare clientele, especially in the beginning, came from Craigslist. Of course, then I started to use Facebook, which I kind of like, I kind of don't like. Advertising is very tricky. You have to follow what it is that that you're supposed to be doing, and your clients will come. That's what I will say. That's my spiritual self wants to let you know that. My business self says, find where your advertising is best. Don't let anyone, some people say don't use Craigslist. Well, Craigslist is where I got my start running my daycare. And I had a full house of children. And there was never a point of time that I didn't have children after I started really advertising on Craigslist. But you want to have a professional setup. If you don't have a website and policies and all this kind of things in place, people might think you're sketchy. You need to have all your licensing in place so that people know that this is a reputable daycare. But advertise. I like word of mouth advertising, but to be honest, because of the demographic and the people that I chose to serve, word of mouth wasn't good for me, because a lot of people just oh, this is cheap childcare. You can get cheap childcare over here. You can get cheap. And they weren't really accessing what it was that I was trying to offer them. And that was a chance to, live a better life for the young ladies. So word of mouth didn't really work for me. I wanted to target people who they were in desperate need of childcare, and they were literally looking for a heaven sent, an angel here on the earth to help to move them in the right direction. And to be honest, I had so many of those families. Most of the people who I serviced, of course, there was a handful of them in there who just wanted to be cheap. But towards the end, I got really good at weeding out those people, and I was targeted on the people who really needed my help the most. All right, so here's just some additional tips. And like I said, I have my notes here. Do parent interviews. Now, I did not, well, yes, I did. Yeah, I did. I didn't do them as intense, and I didn't make them mandatory when I first started, because I was just trying to be helpful. I want to help everyone. Everyone deserves, and everyone deserves childcare, and everyone can afford it. Do interviews. Every single family towards later on, especially when I moved into the home, and especially when we moved into the home and we had all this space and we had spent all this money on this daycare, I did interviews. I didn't want just know anybody, okay? I wanted to know your intentions. I wanted to look you in your eye and see what were your intentions with, taking you on as you taking me on as a provider, and me taking your child on as something that, I do on a day-to-day basis. I want to see your intentions. I want to see how you interact with your child. Like, does your child listen to you? Because if your child don't listen to you, your child ain't about to listen to me, and we about to have a long day. So I did parent interviews. Like I said, future video, I will show you guys some questions that you can ask, some things that you can look for. This is gonna be good. Okay, so the next thing is find the right age range. When I first started out, I didn't have any stipulation. I didn't have a baby at the time. Like, my daughter was born in the process of me actually having the daycare. But I grew later on to learn that I didn't really like dealing with the babies. It made me very nervous. Babies are very, they're very soft, they're very tender, they're very, not breakable, but you know what I mean? Like, you have to be very careful with babies, and I didn't really want to take any babies. And then I realized that the age group of people that stayed with me, they were of a certain age group, like the 2 to 3 year olds. So that was my sweet spot, up to 4 years old. I will tell you that the babies you have to do less with, but you can have less of. Remember that for licensing. You can't have 6 babies when sometimes you can have 6 kids. You can't do that. So the money is a thing too. But the babies were just too much for me, especially because then I had my own newborn baby. Let me tell you about the older kids, because I ran a few summer programs, and those older kids, it's hard to keep their attention span. I had a lot of things for the kids to do. My 2 to 3 to 4 year olds had a blast. It was like a kindergarten classroom in there. But those older kids, those 10, 11, 12 year olds gave me the blues, okay? And at the time, my daughter and my son were 11, 12. So it worked out kinda, but those kids gave me the blues. So if that's your area, that's your area. If not, if you're not planning on going like a lot of field trips, I would leave the older age group of kids alone, okay? So next, decide what you're gonna provide. Are you gonna provide lunch? Like I said, I used to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I was cooking breakfast, and everybody had a break. Like, it was a whole thing. I decided what I was gonna provide. I did not provide dinner. I did provide snacks. We did curriculum. Like I said, I provided field trips. We did water play. We did a lot of things, but you need to decide what it is that you're going to provide for the children. Okay. I hope this video was helpful, and I look forward to sharing more about the daycare with you guys, because I mention it a lot, but I don't give any tips. And I'm like, I'm not going to be charging, like, you going to pay for the website, because that takes a long time, like I said. But I'm not going to be charging to give you guys like this information that God freely gave to me, because nobody helped me set this up. It was literally like, kind of like me in massage therapy, y'all. Like, the Holy Spirit just brought it to me, and I was able to just walk it out and be successful at it. But like I said, when it was time to move on, and it was a very trying and kind of like sad time for me, because I had been doing this. I had been building Dominion Pathways for the last 5 years. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions whatsoever, if you have any suggestions or like videos that you want to see outside of the ones that I mentioned here, because I'm going to let them flow. When I come up with them, I'm going to bring you guys the content about the daycare and the, just the little things in here. There are a lot of resources here on YouTube as well. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.